here's Brody Brazil.
You know, it must have been after one of my recent sports team relocation videos where an ownership group just didn't look so great because of whatever situation. Somebody made a comment here on YouTube, more like a question, wondering, are there even good sports owners out there anymore? And obviously my answer is yes, of course there are, but it also brought me to the realization, look, this is something we don't talk about. We don't really clarify. We hardly ever identify, like, what actually makes a good sports team owner. And I think these are things we realize, we're aware of, but again, we never actually practice getting them out here in the conversation. So let's do that right now, and let's begin with number one. This is very important: competitive payrolls for your team and for your players. Now, this does not necessarily mean always spending the most. Maybe sometimes it does. But generally speaking, I mean, do you want to be the top spending team in any given league? Usually that means you're not going to win the championship. And spending and championships absolutely do not go hand in hand. There is some correlation, but there's also that saying, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. So competitive payrolls are important, but spending the most is not obviously the most important aspect about it. It's more about knowing when to go for it. Like when you've got momentum and when you've got things lined up, and maybe when you've got a young group of players and you realize you need to keep this group together, you need to keep the band together, you've got to pay them, you've got to keep this group. Or if there's that perfect free agent piece that's out there and it takes the right amount of money to sign that player, bring them into your existing group, it's all about committing to the right people and players, and I say those two things separately. Yes, you need the player, the performer on the field, on the ice, on the pitch, on the court, whatever, but you also need good people, the right people for your organization, as players, as coaching staff, as trainers, as part of your front office. So committing to the right people and players is a huge part of being able to spend a certain amount and having a competitive payroll overall. You don't want to be at the top. I don't think being at the bottom on a regular basis, I don't think that's going to help your cause. If you're all about really winning championships, then being middle to top half is being a competitive payroll, and that's probably where you want to be. Also, a competitive payroll is important, but it's also imperative that you don't pass that buck on to your customers. Like all of a sudden, the spending goes up, and so the cost of going to games for fans goes way up. And usually competitive payrolls, they don't ride a roller coaster up and down. Sometimes they might be a slow wave up and then maybe a few down years because you can't afford to spend at that clip forever. But the bottom line is consistent competitive payrolls and not passing the buck on to your customers because of maybe spending a little bit more in any given situation. A good owner or ownership group, number two here, it seems like they always keep a good general manager. And consistency, in my opinion, is usually a good indicator of a good general manager. Like the fewer you have over a given period of time, the better. That lets you know that you've got the right people, and so long as your product on the field, on the ice, on the court is going in the right direction, you've got yourself a good general manager. And when you've got a good general manager, you let them do their thing. You as the owner, you're not in it to overstep. You're not telling them strategy or giving them suggestions on the players you'd like. Of course, you're the owner and you're going to have to, sign the checks for all this stuff. You trust your general manager. That's why you brought your general manager in to do their general managing. But oftentimes we know it's the owner that might want to get their hands dirty on the situation, all the way down to, like team strategy and execution. And that's not something that necessarily is their expertise. Also, you want a good general manager who doesn't try and fix everything with money. That's part of the overspending part, right? Like you want to be a competitive spending team, but you don't want to be an overspending team. And sometimes the GM will just look and say, hey, can I sign this person? Can I sign that person? What's the cost going to be? We'll worry about that later. A good general manager doesn't try and fix everything by spending more. A good owner or ownership group has a passion for it. Now let's focus here on an individual. Let's say it's an individual owner type situation of a team. That person doesn't need to be at every game. We don't need to see that person. They don't need to be on social media talking about their team all the time. They also don't need to do every single interview that they're ever requested for. To know they exist is great, but we don't need to see them on any regular or daily basis. All that I think any fan wants to know about their owner is the understanding that that owner loves the sport, loves the team, and loves winning. And preferably all three. I guess maybe you could even get 2 out of 3. Hopefully winning is one of the 2 of those 3, but preferably all 3. But if you could get a little combination of both, and maybe sometimes owner really loves the sport and likes the team that they own and likes to win, or sometimes they love winning, but maybe the sport isn't necessarily their thing, but they love their team. That's fine. Combination of those 3 things, you have to just have an understanding that the owner is passionate about preferably all 3 of those things. But I would also say there's a fine line between passion and obsession. Again, a lot of times an owner might come from a different competitive business where they've been very successful, and all of a sudden in sports, they don't have that same level of success. So they obsess about, what am I doing wrong and how do I get this right? And they, again, do too much. Are you noticing a trend here? You don't want to do too much as an owner. You want to be in the happy medium and give everybody the right chance to succeed. And last but not least here, a good ownership or ownership group, they have a great community bond with the region that their team calls home. A person who has good ties to local government, if we're talking about a singular team owner, even if only for the good of the franchise. Like as the owner of the team, you want to make sure that the city you play in, the county you play in, the state you play in, that in case something happens, in case you need something, call in a favor, that you've got a good relationship so that your home is your home. It's no different than being a good neighbor of a neighborhood, right? You want to be friends with your neighbors and those who make decisions and could help you out. So a good owner has a nice bond in the community, and usually that team also has a strong community fund or a team foundation that's entrenched in the local region, and they're philanthropists and they give back and they do good deeds for the community. And the team is generally a good neighbor, a good citizen, a good teammate, and a good participant in local interests, right? Like they are very attached and entrenched in the community. And if you've got that, then your owner is doing a good job, not just running the business and trying to win games and sign the right players and all that stuff, but also to literally solidify that team and that business in the community. And obviously, depending on what sport it is, to help that game grow. Sometimes if it's a baseball team, it's building little league fields or participating in flag football if you're an NFL team, or a lot of hockey teams across the United States, building additional sheets of ice and rinks so that young people can learn how to skate and play hockey. Growing the game is imperative, and so a good owner also does that out in the community because not only will it help their business over decades and over generations, but obviously it's just a good thing to do and grow with the community. So those are the things, in my opinion, that make a good team owner. And I realize, again, here on this channel, with relocation and rule changes, a lot of times owners are painted in kind of a negative light. And it's just because of the situation, right? It's because of the topics at hand and the way these things come up. And sometimes, the fan-owner relationship, it just isn't great. But I wanted to point out these things of what I think makes a good team owner, and hopefully you agree. Did I miss something? Did you really like something? Make sure you put that in the comment section down below. Also, while you're down there, a thumbs up on this video since you've now made it here to the end. That would greatly help me in this video and this channel. And one more thing, don't forget to go down there and hit that subscribe button if you already haven't. That way I definitely get to see you back here next time.